If I could share with you one thing that would change your life forever and help you awaken spiritually, it would be this teaching that we're going to explore today on the episode. It's literally what has moved me to my core and offered a foundation for how I live. And so, in this special episode, we're going to have a deep conversation and an embodied inquiry around self realization, around enlightenment. And really, one of the deepest questions we can ever ask ourselves is, who am I? And so we're going to explore this together in a fresh, lived experience on the podcast. And I want you to know that if you're new to any of this work or you feel lost at any point, don't worry about it. Just tune into your body. Just notice what in you already knows beyond the mind. Welcome. I'm Alyssa Nobriga, your host of the Healing and Human Potential podcast, a place for you to discover the multidimensionality of what it means to be human. Over the past 20 years, I've trained thousands of coaches in my methodology, leveraging my experience as a former psychotherapist, and I'm here to share with you all the wisdom and insights that I've learned along the way. Each week, I'll share with you life-changing tools to support you in awakening and manifesting your dream life from the inside out. We'll be exploring the intersection between ancient wisdom and modern everyday life, really diving deep into the art of human potential through the lens of psychology, spirituality, and coaching. Let's let the magic unfold. Today, I'm honored to share with you my first formal spiritual teacher. Her name is Gangaji. When I found her, she gave voice to something that was so deep and true inside of me and supported me on my journey. And so I want to just invite you to listen with an open mind and open heart, and know that if you connect with a different spiritual teaching or religious upbringing, all of it is welcomed. It's really from the foundation of wholeness, of love. So I want you to hear it from that lens. But what I love about her teachings is that it's a direct sword that cuts through illusion, and it just goes right to the heart of enlightenment. And her teachings are really rooted in recognizing the freedom and the peace that already exists here in the truth of your being. And so my hope is that this episode deepens your own discovery. I'm so honored and happy to be here with you, Gangaji, truly. I wanted to start us off by just sharing how life brought me to you at 18 years old. I think it's a beautiful story, and I think it would be great for you to hear, but also just to give people a reference point. So my dad moves up to Mount Shasta, a little mountain town in Northern California, and he wants to rent a movie. So we go out of the house. This is before we could actually rent movies on our TVs. And so we go to this video store, and he's like, pick anything you want. And I'm walking through seeing the covers of each movie. And I happen to see your face on a video, on a VHS. I didn't know who you were. I'm just drawn to you. I pick that one. We come home and we put it in, and I start crying.
Mm,
Nothing inside of my mind at 18 could comprehend or articulate what you were saying, but everything in my being knew deeply this was a
mm,
resounding yes.
mm,
And it was so affirming to have somebody put into words what my experience was and to articulate it in a way that I couldn't. And
mm,
so, first off, I just want to say thank you.
mm,
I'm so grateful to have you in my world, in my life, and just for being such a guide, such a poignant guide. Over the years, I found out that my mom and my brother also found you, not with me knowing that. So I think my whole family was drawn to you and the work that you do. And just over the years, I kept following what was alive in my body. And I found Byron Katie, I found Adyashanti and
mhm.
Muji and Eckhart Tolle. And then somebody later said, oh, you like non dual teachers. Non dual meaning not two, for those that don't know. And I'm like, oh, great. There's a concept for this that's really helpful. That makes it easy. And I know that some of your lineage is through your teachers, Ramana
Mm,
Maharishi, which is a beautiful man in India who I've heard as termed the godfather of non-duality, and that one of his students was Papaji, who's such a bright light, and I know
mm.
you one of your teachers. And I think if I understood it right, that he asked you to come start sharing these teachings in the West. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow, what a
and
beautiful, beautiful story. Let me just take a moment to let you
yeah.
know how honored I am
Mm,
that mysteriously you are drawn to this and that
yeah,
we serve each other in this.
yeah. Thank you. I mean, if I could share one thing that I know would change people's life, it would be this teaching. And I'm so
Mm,
honored to have you be a voice
mm,
for this.
mm,
And I know that you've guided thousands of people over the years, and I know that people have a sincere interest in self-realization, in
mm,
awakening. And I'm sure you've seen some common roadblocks, some things
mm,
that maybe themes or cul-de-sacs, misunderstandings that people
mm.
come up to along their journey. Are you able to share any of those in service to people becoming more aware and being able to see it?
Oh, I'm happy to, at least happy to share my take on it.
Yeah.
I never know exactly how it will be phrased or where the conversation will go, but
Mm.
that's that's the point of my being here.
People are searching. I think people are
Mm,
searching everywhere. And some people were sold in society to search for it in a partner, in
mm,
finances, how we look,
mm,
even
mm,
spiritual awakening, right? There's still
yes.
this searching. And I think that that has a divine design within that desire. I think it's a
Mm,
calling back home
mm,
to ourselves in a deeper
mm,
way. And I know that you speak to this and it feels very poetic and beautiful when you share that it's so simple that it's often
mm.
overlooked. Can you elaborate on that a bit more for people that are genuinely interested?
Well, I think you really touch on the central issue, and that's this issue of what I call yearning. It
Mhm,
becomes yearning maybe at the end. Initially, it's a desire to get more or to have more, to the right mate or the right job or the right circumstances, the right looks, the right weight, however it appears. It's some kind of yearning for completion.
mhm,
That if I had that, then I would be happy. And then we get that and we are happy for a little bit and we either lose that or we become disillusioned or we want more of that. And so that's the cycle. And in a
mm,
big sense, that's a cycle of birth and rebirth that's talked about in most of the Eastern religions. Because in that moment of actually getting what we have wanted, we are at peace.
mhm,
We are free. But that moment, because it was predicated on some kind of action that we had to do, is bound to pass.
mhm,
I mean, it rots. If it's a piece of fruit, it rots or it's eaten and digested. And so, what my teacher and what I'm attempting to do in my conversations with people is to invite anyone who has experienced this yearning to simply stop trying to fulfill it with objects,
mm,
whether they're physical or material or esoteric objects. So, even to stop trying to fill it with enlightenment, to
mhm,
actually just stop, to be still. And in that, then there's the innate capacity that we have as human beings to actually inquire what is here and what is here that is always here.
mhm, mhm,
And that's really goes counter to the impulse
mhm,
to, well, in some ways just the impulse to survive, because we have this impulse certainly to eat, and we have the impulse to jump away from danger or to fight danger, all totally appropriate. May we all survive, but ultimately none of us survive. We all die. And to discover what is always here, regardless of our survival
yeah,
or
yeah,
regardless of our death, is to be free. To die before you die is to be
mhm,
free in this life. And it doesn't mean you don't have desires. Certainly, I like a good meal. I like a good night's sleep. I like a good laugh. But my sense of myself and my fulfillment doesn't rely on that. And
yeah.
that's the edge.
Yeah, I heard you say this. Yeah, I heard you say
Uh,
stop. And
uh,
as an Enneagram type 3 personality, of very like achievement oriented, I really took to heart. I said, I want freedom more than I want to
mm,
be seen or success. So I stopped for about 8 years. I think some of that
mm,
searching went through even enlightenment, and
mm.
sitting for silent retreats and whatnot. And, we have to dance our dance. But later, I really heard you clarify this stopping is stop making it mean something about who you are.
Yes.
and to notice what's here before you even go looking for
mm,
something else.
mm,
Notice what's prior,
mm,
that this beautiful teaching of thoughts come and go, feelings come and go, behaviors come and go, but what doesn't come and go? To
mm,
really notice that was very helpful in my own
mm,
inquiry, my own journey.
mm.
So thank you for that.
Well,
And
really, it is the potential for ending suffering. We have our different journeys, and there are moments where we want something and we get it, or we want something and we don't get it. But the fulfillment is immovable.
mhm,
And when that's recognized as the essential truth of who we are,
mhm.
then yes, we can live lives, regular lives, doing whatever we choose, succeeding, failing, however it plays out. But we aren't unnecessarily suffering. We
Yeah.
may feel pain or we may feel
Mhm,
disappointment, but that doesn't define us.
mhm.
Those are just passing experiences, some quite pleasant, some quite unpleasant. But
Yeah.
the ground of being, the truth of yourself, to discover that is to be free.
Mhm, mhm. I love it. Will you share maybe a pivotal moment in your own journey, just to give people a reference point who are like, I'm feeling this, and maybe want a little bit of story just to
Sure,
relate to.
sure. Well, you mentioned your point number on the Enneagram. I'm
Yeah.
point 4. So
Uh-huh.
would say I had a story of suffering and image and trying to achieve love in
Mhm,
so many different ways. And
mm,
so I did experience love in many different ways, but it was never enough.
mhm.
So the way I was doing it was, to be popular, and for everybody to love me.
I don't know anything about
And
that.
then, then it would be enough. And of course, everybody doesn't love you, so that's an impossible goal. And so it's a goal designed to make you suffer more. And
Mhm,
so my spiritual journey really began in the 1970s after I moved to California. And really, there was a lot happening then. The spirituality was in the air, and different Eastern gurus were coming through. And I recognized there's a bigger life than the life I had been chasing.
mm,
And while I had many highlights in that life, I knew I really had to listen to something deeper, and I had no idea at that point what that meant.
mm,
I hadn't been trained in meditation. I certainly didn't know anything about the Far Eastern stories or enlightenment. It was a meaningless word to me, but I just felt it's back to the yearning, but this yearning somehow had matured out of a more simplistic yearning of just to be loved. It was, I need something and I don't know what it is.
mm,
So there was a curiosity that was brought to it. And that curiosity, in my mind, is essential
mm,
for any true seeker.
mm,
That's essentially, I am called to something and I don't know. In that I don't know, there's an opening of the
mhm,
mind. And then and I'm sure many people listening, tasted many, many different possible answers to that of what is that. And I ended up studying meditation and working with in different Buddhist traditions, primarily, finally Tibetan Buddhist, and met the man I married that I loved, and he also was a profound spiritual seeker. And so we were on this path together, and we had a beautiful life. We were, by this time, this was in the 1980s, living in Mill Valley in a wonderful little house. And I was an acupuncturist and had wonderful clients who loved me and thought I helped them. And that was fulfilling and great.
Yeah.
But still, when each of us told the truth, there was something we knew we didn't know, and that
Yeah.
actually we needed a teacher. And by that time, we'd studied the Enneagram and had different teachers and had benefited enormously. I really want to say that. always there's enormous benefit in every avenue.
Mhm.
And I hadn't wanted a guru. I had seen gurus come through town, and I was not interested in that scene. But I knew I needed a teacher, and so I just suspended all of my ideas about what that might mean, and I prayed to the universe
Mm,
for a teacher.
mm,
And mysteriously, miraculously, within 6 months, because of a series of events, I was in India knocking on Papaji's door.
mm.
And he opened the door. There were not many people coming to see him at that point. And he said, "Oh, come in. What do you want?" And somehow I said, "Freedom," because what I thought I wanted was happiness or just peace of this drive, or to be universally loved, or to
Mm,
love always universally. I had many concepts, but when I just opened my mouth and let the answer to his question, "What do you want?" arise, what arose was freedom.
mm,
I didn't know what that meant really. And he said, "You're in the right place." And I knew it. I knew that was my
mm,
teacher.
mm,
It was love at first sight. I
mm.
knew he was a great teacher before we came, so I had been prepared. It was not like I met him on the street and said,
Yeah.
"That's my teacher." But after a while, we had tea and we sat down together, and I said, "So tell me what to do." And he said, "Excellent question. Just be still." Since I had meditated a lot and knew a lot of practices, I assumed a meditative posture and I began to get still. And he said, "No, no, no, no. That's too much. Don't do anything.
Mm,
Just recognize where stillness is. Recognize what is already still." And well, first I would say a great fear arose. I touched on this, the possibility of stillness and stopping, and a fear of losing the ground that I had covered,
mhm,
of becoming this 11-year-old, miserable 11-year-old, wondering, how can I get happy? I,
mm,
I just felt the fear of regression back to that.
mm,
But I knew I had prayed for a teacher. And so that gave me the courage to actually just be still.
mm.
And in an instant, in that moment, there was this peace and fulfillment. That moment changed. That wasn't the end for me, but but it was a taste. It was a
Yeah,
true taste, and I recognized I had had taste before. There were always
yeah,
taste, but those tastes were discounted because they didn't stay.
yeah.
Because I wanted something that would stay naturally. We
Mhm,
want that, heaven on earth. But here it was. And so then over the course of that visit, there were questions and answers. And then at one moment, there was just a certainty, a
mm,
recognition of, I'm tasting myself here. I'm tasting the
mhm,
truth of myself.
mhm. My experience is once that's been tasted, nothing else touches the satisfaction of that.
That's
And
so, so true.
imagine having a fulfilling career doing what you love, working from anywhere in the world, setting your own hours while making good money and a big impact. If that lights you up, then I'm super excited to share with you today's sponsor, the Institute for Coaching Mastery. This is my robust, accredited year-long certification program for newer seasoned coaches, therapists, leaders, and those just looking to up-level their life in a profound way. We have an amazing community of students from all around the world who have really started their journey to expand with us both personally and professionally. And this experience is designed to give you the 3 things that you need to thrive. So, first, you have all of the tools and support you need to move past what's been holding you back so that you can completely change the trajectory of your life. And then you learn how to masterfully and confidently facilitate transformation with your clients or your team, regardless of your niche. If you want to do health, business, relationship, or you just have no idea yet, we hold your hand through that. And then lastly, you'll receive my 6-figure and beyond signature roadmap that's customizable to meet you wherever you are. So whether you want to do high ticket sales, online marketing, or you just want to hit 6 figures without ever needing to go on social media, we've got you covered. And this truly is the most rewarding work in the world. We have new students now who have a waitlist of dream clients in under a year. We also have seasoned students who are doing $80,000 months. And this is really about creating lasting transformation from the inside out so that you can share your gifts and serve the world in all the ways that you're called to. And I've seen firsthand the power of what happens when you have the community to collaborate with, but you also have the right tools and resources to really thrive. And so whether you want to do your own personal development, you're wanting to become a coach, or you're just looking for a cutting edge approach to really grow your business, the Institute for Coaching Mastery is for you. You are held every single step of the way. And so if you want to get behind the scenes access to the Institute with 3 proven transformational tools for free to help you create the business and life you love, all you have to do is go to alyssanobriga.com/tools, or you can find us at alyssanobriga.com/apply now to see all the details and apply today. And I think, stillness and silence is a big, beautiful practice to support people in tuning into what's here beyond the mind, beyond the conditioning. And I know I've sat probably in 18 or 20 silent retreats, a few of them with you, more will be with you. And people ask me all the time, what types of silent retreats do you love? And I love Adya Shanti's and yours, more non-dual teachings. Adya doesn't do them so much anymore. And I think Vipassana is very well marketed online. Back in the day, I just was like, I just am craving stillness. So I Googled Vipassana, I Googled silent retreats, and I went to India and went to Ramana's ashram and did all the things. And I did a Vipassana meditation. And in my perspective, it didn't feel helpful for my achiever mentality of the 3. It felt more of do these body scans so that then you become enlightened in the future, which doesn't, how I understood it and how I experienced it, which doesn't resonate as much as more non-dual teachings is rest in your true nature, rest in the being of who and what you are. And which is also a more feminine approach. It's more of an embrace. And
That's true.
that feels more alive and true for me. And so I just want to give people a reference point that may be like, okay, I'm feeling this. And I really find that the mind settles around day 3. A lot of the retreats I've done are 5-day. I feel like the mind really settles around day 3 to ask deeper questions, to really, get out of some of the busyness of modern day society and ask questions like, who am I? And one of the things that my first silent retreat, I was like, oh, this feels like childhood. And I realized that I used to get sent to bed and I wasn't tired. So I'd end up accidentally tripping out in vastness. And it felt like home. And just to give people a reference point who may not even realize that they've had touch points of this, where
Yes.
it's like, imagine you're in outer space and there's no stars. It's vast and this dark, velvety, black on black, but extremely intimate at the same time. It feels like home. And I know one of your direct inquiries, self-inquiry, is who am I? And so to really ask that question. And one of the things I find people get caught around is thinking that they're looking for something to fill the void, the like, who am I? And they're looking for an object of who they think they are, versus just hanging out in the vastness, just noticing what's already noticing, what's actually here before us, something. And so I just want to offer that as a pointer because it's been a beautiful guide that I've received from these teachings. And I would love for you just to elaborate a little bit more on that if you're open.
So beautiful. So clear. You're such a natural.
Mm.
Isn't that amazing with 3 fixation to discover that you're a natural?
You
The
don't have to do
under
anything to be what you
Yeah.
are. Yeah. Yeah.
It's so
And just I want to
beautiful.
plug that I went to Hawaii for a retreat that you and Eli did, and that's one of the ways that I learned about the Enneagram. And one of the things I loved about that, because I talk and really reference the Enneagram, but what I really heard from you guys is the Enneagram is who you are not, that the
Ah,
Enneagram is your personality. And I just found that
yes.
so helpful. Yeah.
Yes, it's the trick. The Enneagram is the trick that is embedded in your cells. But how beautiful then when you realize the vastness, then the Enneagram has served in
Mhm,
that to show you who
mhm,
you're not. I just
mm.
wanted to say one thing about the Vipassana because there were really at that time, I'm not sure what's happening now, but at that time there were two different styles of Vipassana, and it sounded
Okay.
like you
Mine
went
was
to
Goenka. That's right.
Goenka style, and that was particular. The one that came out of, oh, I don't know if it was Burma, probably Burma, the Vipassana, the people, the meditation center in the Bay Area, and
Mhm,
Jack Cornfield, and those different people, those people, it was much more really without anything added, just
mm.
sitting
Okay.
amazingly 45 minutes at a time. Or maybe it was an hour at a time. It was a miserable length of time, but
It was a long time.
unmoving.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just being
Yeah.
aware of what comes up without anything imposed about future enlightenment. It
Mm.
was for me a very cleansing, uh,
Beautiful.
like a kind of boot camp, it
It is
was,
like a boot camp for meditators. That's exactly
yeah,
how I speak to it, which I think also can have its place. And I think
yes,
sometimes in our life, we need a bit more of that structure, the masculine, whereas other
yes.
times we want a little bit softer, a bit more
Mm,
relaxed and just being. So I love that you share the difference of the Vipassana, the lineage and where it comes from. And
yeah.
also just for people to tune in, what may serve you now may not serve you later. So listen to that.
That's right. That's
Mhm,
right. And that was my journey anyway. It was very useful, and I knew that I would not become a devotee of that because,
mhm.
first of all, it was just too uncomfortable physically for me, and I was also into dance and the
Mhm,
body, and I just
mhm.
felt like this is just not that healthy for my
Yeah.
legs to stay like
Yeah.
this. And it was deepening and wonderful. So all of the meditations that I tasted were really beautiful, and they all, for me, left something unanswered because most of them were predicated on this future that
Yes.
in the next lifetime, or
Yeah.
if you work really hard, you may get to a certain stage. And I just somehow, without knowing how, knew that there was something that was more immediate that I
Mhm,
was craving. And that
mhm.
turns out to be this direct inquiry, which is based on, from Ramana, who who am I? Who am I? Of course, people can take that and make that a practice and use that as some kind of avoidance for a deeper surrender to who you
Mhm.
are without the words, who am I? Because those words are objects in our minds and
Yeah.
they have different connotations and meanings. And to really just erase the whole slate of words and learning and recognize what is here that has always been here.
Mhm,
It's really
mhm.
good news.
And that there's nothing to do to get it. It is what we are now already.
Well, that's the
Yeah.
challenge, you know.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
simplicity is the challenge because
Mhm.
I know for myself and many people I've talked to, it was, oh, but this couldn't be it. Oh, but this was too simple. Oh, okay, that's good, but how
Mm,
about when I feel like this? And so that's really mostly what I deal with is the yes, but.
mhm,
Because
mhm.
by the time people are interested in me or Papa G or what this lineage is bringing, they have had some experience, whether they
Yeah.
called it spiritual or not. There's been something that made it not a regular life, but a
Mhm,
life somehow that wants bigger or deeper.
mhm,
And
mhm.
we have, as you have, that beautiful memory that is alive in you of when you were a child and in
Mhm.
the vastness of being. And then, yes, but the morning comes, you get dressed, you go to school, you learn who you are and what you are and how good you are, how bad you are, how to get better. So it's really addressing that. It's like a remedial
Hmm.
course for those people who have tasted the truth.
Yeah, it's like an unlearning of what is unenlightening me, right?
Yes,
Instead of and so it's like a removal. Two
yes,
practices for me are inquiry, questioning the mind, waking up from the
yes,
mind, and stillness of just abiding, resting in the nature of my
yes.
being prior to the conditioning.
Papa G often would deal with people questioning and using enlightenment. Well, how do I get enlightened? Or I'm so unenlightened. And he would say, the secret, the key is to give up both your unenlightenment and your enlightenment.
Mm,
Then
mhm,
you aren't this object that is one
mhm,
way or the other way. And
mhm.
then that's enlightenment.
Mhm, mhm. One pointer that was really helpful, that Audio Shantis shared was, just being in meditation and then really getting to this still place, but then questioning who is the one that's meditating, and to wake up then out of that
Ah,
subtle identity of being the
yeah.
meditator. It's like then everything is just
Yes.
all
Mm,
not even connected because that would imply too just,
yes. That's
oh
right. That's
yeah,
the gesture. That's the mudra,
the-
really.
this
It's-
opening. Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Yes, it's touching it because we are designed to make objects in our minds. That's
Mhm,
a survival mechanism.
mhm,
And it's a beautiful survival mechanism. We can see danger, we can see benefit, we can go toward benefit or away from danger. And so we objectify everything. And now, as human beings, as so called advanced human beings, hopefully there's more advancement to come as a species, we recognize that our narratives are objectifications of reality, and they
mhm,
are powerful objectifications, but
mhm,
all we have to do is just read the news or listen to the news one day to realize that they are strongly competing narratives of
mhm,
reality,
mhm,
and that is the disunifying.
mhm,
Within a family, there can be strongly competing narratives, but usually a family agrees on a familial narrative. And we learn in school and through our family and churches or whatever, a narrative that sort of narrates who we are. Like my narrative was I'm this suffering, princess who has to find the right kiss from the prince to be released, and that's a fairy tale. That's an
Yeah.
archetype, and it's not who I am. And it's just
Mhm,
it's where I fit, where this body mind fit, and so
mhm,
that's a trance that has to be broken,
mhm,
and it's broken through a moment of being willing. It's already being broken for anyone who's listening to this and is interested. And it's just the willingness to surrender, to let it all go, to not know who you are,
mhm.
just to be who you are for one moment.
And to feel into the nourishment, because I
Mm.
think that the ego holds on out of the story that it's scary, so it
Yes,
holds on to the illusion of control. And yet, I just want to be a voice for the nourishment that happens in the
yes.
letting go, the safety, the intelligence that
Mm,
happens.
mm,
It's deeper than any psychological work we could
mm,
ever do. It
mm.
touches on something more core to that. And and I know that surrender and courage is a part of the process. I think having awareness over some of the conditioned responses of who we've taken ourselves to be, and having stillness and inquiry are really beautiful practices, and the willingness to really directly find out what's true in this moment without any of the
Yes,
stories. And
because,
even inquiring into the illusion of time was
yes.
really helpful on my path. And I'm curious if you could share a little bit as a way to help people unpack, because sometimes we don't know what we don't know. It's like that refrigerator hum that's going and we don't even know it's
Ah,
there until it stops and we're like, okay, right? Some of those identities and those stories.
yes. Well, we don't know. We've just, there's a whole world going on in there, and
Mhm.
not just from our present lives, but it's passed on through the DNA
Yeah.
because it's predicated on survival. So the more we know, the more we think we will be able to survive. But we
Mhm.
have discovered in this age And maybe since the bomb in Hiroshima, we've discovered that knowledge is not a guarantee of survival. So
Yeah.
that has really shook our world, or shaken maybe is the correct term, our world in a certain way that's very useful. We
Hmm.
recognize that knowledge doesn't give us life everlasting, or
Yeah.
doesn't give us superiority, or doesn't
Hmm.
give us fulfillment. So this is actually deeper than knowledge. It's nothing that you can know, which is what is added to what we learn. And I was a school teacher for years. I'm really into learning. I think it's a delightful, wonderful way to expand the mind in many ways, but it can't give you what is already here and what's always here. And so that recognition, and even just hearing that it's possible to discover that, is a way to support each other or one another in facing the fears. I mean, I mentioned I felt this huge fear with Papaji because I didn't want to lose the ground I had covered. I didn't want to regress. I didn't want to be a miserable 11-year-old. I wanted to be free, whatever my mind thought that meant. But the only way I could discover that freedom is here is to be willing to experience that. And so it felt like, a negative energy coming up. And in my willingness to just be still, to not fight it, to not overlay it with different definitions of what it may or may not be and what it comes from, and without sophistication and without fighting it or running from it, just to be open and still, then that is liberated. That's what actually gets liberated.
Yeah.
Of these hungry ghosts that we have accumulated over the aeons of generating narratives of what we want and how to get it and how to keep away what we don't want.
I'm just remembering that you shared that, and I believed you. I trusted you. And so I think
Ah,
the trust helped me have the courage to go there, to allow what I had been essentially running from, which was this feeling of
mm,
not good enough. My whole life was like, how can I get more successful so that then I am enough, essentially. And I heard you, and I train and coach coaches. And what I love about, and I used to be a psychotherapist, so I love the merge of those two
yeah,
with a foundation of wholeness.
mm,
And when I heard, what I love about coaching is that it requires us to put into action so that
mm,
any of the suffering or the things that have held us back come up to then be presenced.
mm,
And when, I back in the day, I had Deepak Chopra's community come to film me doing some coaching sessions, and I was not looking for any recognition in that way, but I was hiding in my office, and I was so scared to feel this thing I had to perform. I didn't know these people. And I'm in my daughter's room, pink walls, and just listening to something of your guidance about just stop, just allow
mm,
the sensations to be here. And it was the first time in my life that I stopped running from this feeling of not good enough.
yeah,
And ironically, by feeling it, by allowing it, and I do want to
mm,
say that there was a context of wholeness. I wasn't totally identified with the story that I'm a separate self,
mm,
and otherwise, I think it can be overwhelming for the
mm,
nervous system or those that have big T trauma. But there was a vastness that was holding
mm,
a larger presence and spaciousness while the sensation of not good enough, not the story, the sensation came up,
mm,
and it integrated, and it was the doorway to the wholeness that I deeply desired.
mm,
And so just coming back to remembering that, because when you're
mm,
speaking of suffering, there is an intelligence in that
mm,
suffering that
mm,
it guides us back to actually meet and allow and presence those energies that we've been denying, because as we
mm,
say yes to them, they integrate into our nervous system, and then we're free, and then we feel
ah,
naturally what's already here. And so
mm,
I forgot that that was part, you were part of that story for me, so thank you, because I trusted you, and everything you were sharing rang true for
mm,
me. And I know people are going to want to hear this and try it, and I highly recommend it, and make sure that there is spaciousness, there's presence, so you're not so identified and caught in the illusion of who you think you are as not good enough or someone that suffers or whatever the
mm,
Enneagram types are,
mm,
because that's that nourishment, the presence meeting what's been contracted, that expansion and the contraction meeting is what is the alchemy that does transform
mm,
it.
mm. It's really in that moment you are somehow offering yourself for the liberation of this hungry ghost or this misery that has haunted you or this fundamental nature of your suffering of your
Hmm.
ego,
Hmm.
this I'm not good enough. It's like you are giving that room to be liberated. So that's what's liberated. You
Yeah.
are the source of liberation.
Yeah.
Your willingness to hold satsang for all those aspects of your being that are hungry to be
Hmm.
set free.
Hmm. Yeah. And for people that don't have a reference point, satsang is a conversation of truth. It's a,
Mm,
and you could also hear it as like being the loving parent to these parts of you, even though it's not
mm,
totally true, but that's another
mm,
analogy for people to kind of ground this. So that all of it is welcomed because as it's
mm.
allowed, it moves through. That's the
Yes,
ironic thing. The thing that we're running from holds the key to what we really deeply
that's
desire.
it.
Hmm.
That's really phrased perfectly.
Hmm. Hmm.
Hmm. And so to be still, to simply be still, then you really don't even have to go looking for them. They arise because they are attracted. And I'm saying they because in the Tibetan tradition we talked about hungry ghost a lot. And I
Hmm.
really feel like that's what it was pointing to, latent tendencies or
Hmm.
fragmentation of personality, whatever it may be, is searching for wholeness,
Yeah.
aspects of oneself, even if you're just thinking of your body, your mind.
Hmm.
eh, the fragmentation there is drawn to wholeness, magnetized to this wholeness of being. So
Yeah.
it just means in a simplistic way to get out of the way of that, to allow that it takes care of itself.
Yeah. That's the intelligence of all of it when we're
Uh,
willing to just be still and say yes
mm,
to it. And I think
mm,
the pandemic really confronted people with
mm,
some tendencies of them moving away and avoiding and to start looking within and get support to because I think having support is really beautiful to be able to
mm.
guide, especially if there's any big T trauma. I think it's important that we have somebody that can hold that safety if we get lost in the
Yes.
mind or in the past.
Yes,
And
definitely.
mhm, mhm,
And we do. I mean, there's
yeah,
support everywhere.
yeah.
And everywhere you look, there's support. It's quite exquisite, actually.
Mhm, mhm,
There's the whole world then finally is in support of your awakening, including the awakening of all aspects of all being.
mhm.
May all
Agree.
being awaken. That's the
Mhm,
Buddhist invocation, and that applies to each of our fragmented selves as
mhm,
well.
mhm. And I wonder if there are have you seen kind of common stages of the awakening process? I know it's not linear, and I know everyone has a
Hmm.
unique experience, but I remember um, my husband Emilio and I went to come to see you one time, and he was
Mm,
being very vigilant with the mind. And there was a point where that was helpful to really watch the mind, and then there was a point where I think that that could
mm,
be hurtful, a little bit
mm,
hyper
mm,
obsessed. And so I'm just curious if you've seen common themes or stages of awakening. What might you say?
mm. I would say that the most common thing I see is what I referred to a moment ago is the yes, but, because there will
Ah,
be this beautiful experience, and then there's this habit of denial or yes, but I'm not feeling that now, or yes, but. And Papaji, of course, would get this question too, and he would often quote Kabir, who said, once I experienced eternity, the truth of life, for 12 seconds, and I spent the rest of my life in devotion to that.
mhm,
And
mm,
Papaji would point out he wasn't spending the rest of his life to get another taste of that, it was in the devotion to that, then you are You're consumed by that. So then you don't have to do anything
Mhm.
because really
I can
being
hear my
vigilant.
tendency towards doing yeah, yeah,
Yes, well, we
yeah,
all do. We live in a
yeah,
three culture. And
yes,
so
yes.
we have that tendency and we know we have to do to survive.
Mhm,
So that to me is really the key to recognize the survival of the body, the survival of a society requires certain tasks be done or undone, however the case may be.
mhm,
And and so we somehow just naturally transpose that to our inner depth of life. And it's just the opposite. It's the yin of that yang, you know, it's
uh-huh,
it's the opening. And when he would refer to this quote by Kabir, it's like you could just feel the gratitude for
mm,
one taste and one moment. So by the time you and I met, you had had that moment long ago as a
mhm,
child.
mhm,
And then, of course, in life and life's activities, a lot of accumulations had come on top of that. But
mhm,
that is still intact, has
mhm.
never gone anywhere
Yep,
because it's a reflection of your true self.
yeah.
As a child, I had certain experiences that weren't so beautiful, where I would feel the disappearance of my body, but it was quite frightening to me.
Mm, mm,
And it was an anxiety attack. I see now. They didn't
mhm,
have that terminology in the 1940s and early 50s when I was growing up. But they did take me to a psychiatrist, which was the shaman of the area, and he
um,
gave me a little pill to take, and it worked. You know, whenever I felt my body disappearing and the fear that would come with that and the
mm,
anxiety, I would take one of these little pills and feel better. And it was not until many, many years later, actually, when I was in meditating for the first time in maybe one of the first 3 or 4 meditations I'd ever done before I was with Buddhism. I was meditating, I was watching the clock to be sure I meditated the correct number of minutes, and I felt this energy of dissociation
mm,
and the fear that was attached to that come. But because I had promised myself I wouldn't get up until the 20 minutes was over, I sat there and
mm,
it it moved as if it was an invitation to suffering
mm, mm,
based on the past relationship. And in many ways, it was like an exorcism. It moved. And then for me, this hungry ghost was set free.
mm,
And maybe it came up once. I don't think it has ever come up since then. That was like almost 50 years ago. And so the being still, I stumbled upon and I forgot it for years until I heard of Ramana and then met Papaji. I had forgotten the power of simply not moving
yeah.
when everything in you says, ah, get help. There's certainly power in getting help, and there was power for me in getting help when
Yeah.
I was too immature to know how to sit still.
Mhm,
But for those of us listening, we have this capacity, as you
mhm,
have said so eloquently, of just meeting in all willingness
mhm,
what
mhm,
is here,
mhm,
what is hidden.
mhm. Yeah, this energy just wants to be seen and accepted in presence,
Yeah,
and then it
set
moves on.
free. Yeah,
Yeah, it's like
yeah,
a little kid, it just wants a hug, and then it moves
yeah,
on, it plays,
yeah. It
and then we're
gets
just
freed.
yeah, and it's so simple. I'm actually curious your well, one thing I'll share before I get into that, one thing that I found, at least in my own journey, was I've got it, I've lost it. There's this
Ah,
misunderstanding of states, of
mm,
a high state and a low state.
mm,
And really, what was really helpful is seeing that beyond all states is what you are, is not who
nice.
you are, what you are, which is illuminating all states. So, this
Mm,
idea that I got it, I lost it, was an invitation to inquire,
mm.
to see what doesn't come and go, even when the states come and go, to notice what's
That's,
prior to
yes,
all that. Yeah.
that's really crucial. And that's what I mean when I say the yes, but.
Mhm.
I had this experience, yeah, but then I act and I got angry or I got fearful or I lost it. Yeah, It's really recognizing what comes and and is subject to going will go.
Yeah.
What goes and is subject to coming will come back.
Yeah.
What is immovably here? What,
Hmm.
and this is what the essence of Papaji's teaching for me, what really brought me home to myself was you have to find out what doesn't come and go.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
in that, as he suggested, you give up your enlightenment and your unenlightenment.
Hmm.
And then what comes and goes is like the weather. The weather comes and goes.
Hmm.
It's a phenomena of this Leela that we are playing in. So some weather is terrifying and dangerous, and some is beautiful and enlivening,
Hmm.
and they both come and go.
Yeah.
It's the nature.
How do you see the dance and the intersection of spirituality and psychology?
Mm. Well, the way you speak of psychology, I see it as perfectly
Yeah.
meshed, and that's beautiful. And I know that there are a lot of psychotherapists who practice that way. I think the more the was
Traditional.
normal, I don't know if it's still normal, more traditional, was really identifying what was wrong and working on that,
Mhm.
fixing that.
Mhm.
And certainly with some degrees of success. And I know that there is a lot of success in trauma therapy and really
Mhm.
identifying what's wrong
Mhm.
and encapsulating that and really working with that or even re-stimulating that to work with. So I know that there's a lot of really good work. And
I
I also know that that psychotherapy, you're still working on yourself. It's a
Yeah.
split, and
Yeah.
let's say a necessary split because we are fragmented, and
Mhm.
so it's a taking responsibility for a central me, and then all the aspects that are wanted or destructive or helpful.
Mhm.
And then finally, there's just a coming home that all of those aspects, I know you know these Tibetan malas where they're all the gods and demons and enlightened ones and unenlightened ones, and enlightened ones taking the guise of unenlightened ones. It's
Mm.
one of the beauties of the Tibetan religion, Buddhist religion, is it's a unique Baroque kind of version like of Catholicism with all, but Catholicism is very tame in the face of
The
Tibetan
wild.
Buddhism.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it took me a long time to really realize that that's just a reflection of all the phenomenal aspects internally and externally that we experience as beings.
Mm.
And they are here, so they're all invited here. And I see psychotherapy on that spectrum as well as self-inquiry.
Mhm.
For many people, self-inquiry just becomes a rote kind of practice.
Mhm. Mhm.
Well, who am I? Who am I? Who am
Mhm.
I? And so that's not the self-inquiry that I'm pointing to, because that didn't do anything for me.
Yeah.
What did something for me is being still
Yeah.
and then allowing whatever comes up to come
Mhm.
to meet that stillness.
Mhm. Yeah, to really look fresh in this moment and not
Yes.
the powers in the stillness, not the answer. It's like,
Yes,
who am
that's right.
I? What am
Yes.
I? Yeah.
What
Yeah.
is always here?
Mhm. Mhm.
What comes and goes, and what is it's so tempting to want to really identify with a beautiful, oceanic, expansive, enlightened moment.
Mhm.
But if that comes and goes,
Yeah.
it's a moment that comes and goes.
Yeah.
What does it come and go in or on?
Mhm. Mhm. Or the idea that I could get enlightened or I am not enlightened, which is just
Right, right.
another concept in the moment,
Yeah.
or looking for a final state that we arrive at that then,
Yeah.
all the innocence that the mind plays with. And even in
Yes.
my own, and I love the way that I move towards, approaching coaching and psychotherapy. I love that because it is very much about living what has been
Mm,
realized in a very grounded way.
mm.
And the cul-de-sac that I got caught in that you helped me around was somehow in my training, I thought that I needed to heal to awaken.
Ah,
And you lovingly pointed out to bypass that misunderstanding, to say that's not true. And that
Ah,
was helpful for me because I think one of the schoolings that I got really had that tied together. And I can feel there's a truth. And I love the Enneagram as this frame where it helps create a map of the psychology so that then we can wake up out
mm,
of what's
mm.
been unconscious. But it doesn't mean that the personality needs to be totally healed to
That's
awaken,
right.
because we there's a
It's
lot of people that are awakened and have really messed up lives because they haven't.
yeah.
And I love the Ken Wilber frame of waking up and growing up. Yes,
Mm,
but they're
mm,
not
mm.
they're not dependent on
They're
each
not
other.
necessarily dependent on each. I'm so
Yeah.
happy you brought this up. And this is the spiritual bypass that many psychotherapists, advanced psychotherapists, teach, that you shouldn't take the bypass.
Hmm.
And I'm
Hmm.
saying, take the bypass, go immediately home.
Yeah.
Don't spiritually overlay on
Yeah.
anything, but just recognize you have the capacity and the permission to go immediately home.
Hmm.
Then from home, you are working on the defects of your character if you choose,
Hmm.
you know.
Hmm.
I
But
mean, in
in your sorry for to interrupt you. In your
no, please.
perspective, is it because again, it's just incredibly nourishing for the nervous system to
Mm,
rest in your own being. And the psychology and the patterns can still be there, but it's no longer in the foreground, it's more in the background. Is that
mm.
how you hold it? Or can you explain a bit more for us?
Well, I mean, I still have a personality and I still make mistakes.
Yeah.
I
But it's
still
not there's
apologize
not
occasionally.
there's not
It's
an identity caught through.
it doesn't touch my fulfillment.
Mhm.
It doesn't touch my wholeness.
Mhm.
Uh, and this is the edge, because that, and Papaji again, is a continuing source of intelligence, talked about a razor's edge. This is a razor's edge you're walking on, and of course, with a razor's edge, you fall off on
Mhm.
either side, and you recognize that, and those are teaching moments, are
Mhm.
psychotherapeutic growing moments.
Mhm.
And but you return to this willingness,
Mhm.
the razor's edge, and you can't be tense on the razor's edge. Am I doing it right? Is this correct? Because
Yeah.
that's just something from the past, of the way we
Yeah.
were schooled or the way we think we should do it. So
Mhm.
to be the razor's edge,
Mhm.
then you are you're free.
Mhm. 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 Yeah, beautiful. Thank you for that. Yeah. Yeah, there it's almost like the mind wants to project an image of what it's like to be realized in every moment of this perfectionistic
Mm.
ideal, and just
And
seeing that
that's what
as
we've
we're
been
talking.
taught.
Uh-huh.
We've been taught
Uh-huh.
that. And that's why, really, as I said initially, this is Papaji said you have to surrender your enlightenment as well as your unenlightenment, because some of us cling to unenlightenment.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
Surrender that.
Yeah.
And then you
Yeah.
see what is free and what all the talk about enlightenment has been pointing to.
I love it, just keeps coming back to presence, to now, to
Mm,
what's here
mm,
beyond
mm,
all the filters and
mm,
stories of right now. It's so
mm,
clean, it's so helpful.
mm. I'm
Yeah.
so glad.
Yeah.
So
I have
beautiful.
I
Yeah.
have one last question that I think might serve people. I'm curious how you see just our current climate globally, what we're facing, different challenges, and if you believe that spiritual awakening and collective consciousness will play a role in how humanity is evolving. I'm just curious
I
if
have
you could
no
speak
idea.
to
I
it.
mean, it seems like we're in very intense times, and as it was pointed out to me recently, we've always been in intense times,
Yeah.
but we're aware of each other's intense times now more than ever. We know
Mhm.
what's happening all
Mhm.
around the globe, and in any country, even certainly in our country. 10 years ago, this was not happening like it is now. I mean, there's a lot of danger and hate and possibilities of really horrible things happening, and so that's potentially either like, whoa, well, you dive under the covers and don't come back, or you recognize this is
Mm.
reality as it is manifesting in this moment, and how can I be of service to that, so that all being awakens. This was the part of Buddhism that I love the most, is that everything was dedicated to the awakening of all being. Every meditation was dedicated to the awakening of all being. Every meal was dedicated to the awakening of all being. And that is so pure and true that may our lives, may our awakening, may our happiness contribute to the awakening of all beings. And maybe this, I have no idea what will come of all of this. Of course, I have hopes, but they're just hopes, you know. I mean, I don't know that anything is predestined to come
Yeah.
anywhere. We will have to wait and see.
Hmm.
But each of us has a role to play in that, in terms of recognizing the war and torture and hatred within our own selves, often directed to our own selves,
Yeah.
as well as being directed to others.
Yeah.
And in taking responsibility for that, we have the possibility and the true probability of awakening and being free and being of service to
Mm.
all being.
It's beautiful. Thank you. And just in closing, if there's anything that you want to leave people with, if there was one thing you could share with people, what would you want them to experience
Well,
and know?
I would share how thrilled I am to see you again and meet you and to experience the depth of what you're offering through these different avenues.
Mm.
Because I've had ideas about coaching. I've seen coaching in different forms, and I am really happy to see this and relieved in all ways. I've always seen your beauty and your depth, but to see this work that you're doing in the world, and
Mm.
it, that's how it spreads.
Mm.
A candle lights a candle that lights another candle.
That's right. That's right. That's right. We stay true to what's arising within us to say yes to that, and how that continues to illuminate the world as a byproduct. What a gift.
Mm,
What a
mm.
gift. Gangaji, I love you. I am so grateful for your presence. Thank you for your commitment to what's true. It feels like it being so simple and, again, often overlooked. It takes a real love of truth to devote
Mm,
a life to that. And
mm,
in the simplicity and the courage and the willingness to honor that truth, it has influenced and touched so many people,
mm,
including myself. And I just want to highlight and honor your life's work, your
mm,
embodiment, and
mm,
just say thank you from the bottom of my heart.
mm. Thank you for that. I
Mm.
love you too.
Mm.
Mm.
Thank you so much for doing this work that changes the world, starting with yourself. It truly does make a difference. And if you're finding value in this podcast, a cost-free way to support us is by leaving an up to 5-star review. It does mean the world to us. And as a thank you gift, we're going to send you one of the most powerful tools that you will ever discover. You're going to get behind the scenes access showing you how to live into your full potential without letting fear hold you back from stepping into your dreams. Just head over to Apple Podcast or Spotify and leave a review now. You can take a screenshot before hitting submit and then go to alyssanobriga.com/podcast to upload it. And make sure to have your automatic downloads turned on wherever you listen so you don't miss any of the upcoming episodes. I have so much magic I can't wait to share with you. And you can find all this information in the show notes below. But lastly, if you're on Instagram, I love connecting and hearing from you. So come on over and say hello. I'm at Alyssa Nobriga. Thank you again for being here. I cannot wait to share more with you.